Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. As always, wherever in the world you're listening to us from or whatever platform you're listening to us on, thank you guys so much for all the support, all the messages, all the things that you've sent to me, all the things that you've sent to the show. Really do appreciate it. Love hearing from all you guys, and so excited that you're continuing to join us in these awesome conversations that I get to have with all my guests. And so, what I really like about this topic is kind of blend like two really important parts about being a coach. Obviously, talking about the teaching aspect, and as a coach, how you can go about teaching the game to your players and really getting your players, to understand the game at a deeper level. But then also talking about as a coach how you can also make sure that you're maintaining being a lifelong learner and that you are, constantly evolving, adapting, self-reflecting, and techniques that you could use to make sure that you're always staying sharp and staying on top of your game. So it's we're going to really dive into kind of that philosophical aspect today of the art of teaching the game, and also what you as a coach can also do to kind of reflect and continue to learn and grow your understanding of the game as well. So let's jump right into it today. Very happy to be joined by a very busy man in the coaching world. We were just talking about some of his AAU stuff that he was doing, but he's also head women's basketball coach for the College of Southern Maryland. Very happy to be joined today by Coach Davon Muhammad. Coach, again, so happy that you're able here to come on here and chat to us today. How are things going?
First, thanks for having me. Yes, things are good. Busy time. AAU is moving and grooving. And then always working with the college, and doing things in that regard. So very busy, but I
Yeah.
love what I do. So it's an enjoyable thing all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, it's one of those things. Super busy, but like we wouldn't trade it for anything else because we love doing it, right?
For sure.
Awesome, Coach. Let's start with your basketball journey and your coaching journey. Talk about where this game is taking you and where your coaching journey's taken you, and ultimately, how did you end up on the AAU side, but also how did you end up at the College of Southern Maryland?
Yeah, so I was introduced to coaching. Honestly, the passion started when I was in high school. And it was just a on the whim thing. I used to support the women's team or the girls, have friends or whatever, but one day I think their coach was missing for like a fall league game or something, and somebody just asked me did I want to coach. And it was a joke, a little bit, but like I kind of took it serious. So that's where it started. And then ever since then, I started and I was 21. So while I was in college, I did it as an internship with a Boys and Girls Club. And then I was a substitute teacher once I graduated college. I started coaching in middle school. And I just fell in love with everything that comes with it, the relationship building, learning more about the game from a coaching standpoint, roster creation and all of that. So it just became something that I just really enjoyed to do and kind of fell in my lap, and I just continued to do it. So I went from middle school to high school, and then now college. And then with AAU, my brother and I started an AAU organization of our own when we started coaching, because he coached the middle school girls team when I coached the middle school boys team. He had the idea of, hey, we could be really good if we keep them together, and let them kind of work through, the year plan, because in our area, the middle school season is like a month. So it's not a lot of time. Um,
Yeah.
but we did AAU independently for, I want to say, 10 years. And then we were supposed to retire from it, but we ended up helping another organization and somebody that we work with. So it's been a pleasure and a joy. Found a way to get, stay interested and stay keen in on the game. But in a nutshell, that's been that. And then to be at Southern Maryland, um, I've been here for just going into my second year. But my brother, he's the head coach at Prince George's Community College. And he kind of just set the example, to be honest, to where I saw him do it and I said, I could do it too. I'm just as good, I put just as much time in. Um, and I wanted to take that leap. So I joined him on his staff as an assistant. I was still at the time coaching at my high school that I worked at. So I was coaching in both spots. But I knew that that's what I had to do to get the experience to where I could be marketable to somewhere like Southern Maryland. And by the grace of God and just putting in the work, that's where I ended up this past season. So it's all been a blessing in the long run.
Oh, that's awesome. And there's so much that you have exposure to, right? There's so many different levels of the game that you've been around and coached at. And so, like, I imagine there's something unique, right, into every like situation that you're in, whether it's a middle school, high school, college, or AAU. Like, while obviously it's all basketball, like the age group and the skill level and everything is all like a little bit different. So I imagine like that has to kind of challenge you in a good way as a coach because you always kind of have to adapt at every new spot to the way that the game is based on the level or based on the players that you got or the ages that you got, and that must keep you sharp and on your toes.
Yeah, it's well, so at the high school I coached JV. So,
Yeah.
that is you need a lot of patience.
You need it, you need
And
patience.
there's different ways of trying to get them to understand what it is you're trying to teach. Because if you go all in at the highest level of of your knowledge, it's difficult for the players to pick up on. So just trying to find new ways to break it down, to explain it to them, to narrate it to them, to get them to understand it, and then letting them make the mistakes through it. I think is like one of the biggest pieces of it because it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to take time for them to really buy into the fact that they're learning it and they want to continue to fail at it before they understand it. So
Right.
doing that on the JV level is challenging, but again, it does create that avenue to learn and figure out different things. And then as I've navigated forward, it really doesn't change a whole lot because typically you are more knowledgeable than your players. Um, but it is a different level of intensity that might go with it. When you get to varsity,
Yeah.
when you're competing for state championships, and then when you go to college, where you're competing for, and at our level, you're trying to get an opportunity at a four-year university within a year or two. So the intensity of it, of getting it and understanding it and perfecting it, just is picks up a little bit. But in the end, it all comes down to the same thing. That what we see is kind of consistent across the board. And it's just a matter of helping and teaching the players, and for in my sake, the young women and the girls, that this is what you have to do if this is where you want to go with it. So, yes, it's a journey at each level.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parallels to it as well that allows you to kind of keep the message consistent.
Yeah, no, that's for sure, right? Like you mentioned, like that the intensity level and how that is a little bit different. That's definitely true. And it was just funny hearing you talk about the JV thing because I did coach JV for a few years, and whew, you do need to have patience. You got to really make sure that you're staying positive and staying with it because man, there's some crazy stuff that you'll see out there that even I would never expect to see. I'm thinking back to some of those JV experiences, but no, I think it's good. So that's awesome. Um, uh, Coach, I wanted to also make sure I asked you now that you're at the college level about recruiting tips that you would have for players. Obviously, the way the recruiting landscape is now is even a lot different than it was a couple years ago, 5 years ago. So, thinking about now in the present day here in 2025, what are some recruiting tips that you could give for players and things that they need to make sure that they're doing to get noticed by the right people?
It's a lot, honestly. But one thing I think is very important for them to understand is you have to communicate. This generation of player isn't they aren't the greatest at communicating, and I think what is lost upon them a little bit is that us as coaches, especially coaches older than me, obviously, are adapting to this new way of relation to the player. And so we don't understand it where, you read a message and don't respond. We don't understand it to where you reach out with interest and then we don't hear from you. It doesn't really make sense to us.
Yeah,
And a lot of times it's because honestly they aren't equipped yet, or not everyone, but most in some cases, to have difficult conversations. So they don't necessarily know what they're looking for or what it is that they hope to gain from the experience, or what their coaching style they prefer, or it's a lot of those questions that they haven't asked themselves to be able to answer them when the coach asks. And they also don't know how to tell you, yeah, coach, I'm interested, but I'm holding out for this, or I've been also talking to this school, and I'm a little more interested in that at the moment. I don't think they know how to have that conversation a lot of the times, so their communication breaks down. And that can be frustrating for us because again, you have high hopes, or you do your recruiting work and your evaluation, and you're not getting true answers, and then that holds you up from being able to maneuver correctly
Right.
If you don't want to just try to promise the world to every single player. So I would suggest that they effectively communicate and be okay with having difficult conversations. I told one recruit the other day that one, it's my job to do my job. So whether you come or not, I still have to go out and recruit and talk to players to build the best possible program. And two, the lack of communication, I told them, I was like, it's a relationship, you know? So I said, if you break up with somebody, don't you need to tell them that it's over?
Uh-huh.
Um, so it's like, and then they laugh, but I'm like, yeah, it's a way for you to understand that this is what this is. You can't break up with me and then not tell me that, you're moving on. It's okay to do that. I just need you to communicate with me. So once they kind of understand that, they'll realize that recruiting is fun. It's a part of the process to where um, people are going to show their interest. They are going to communicate. They are going to tell you what it is and what they can do. And you're supposed to explore all of those options because it's your life that we're talking about. And you're going to make the best decision for you. So that's the biggest thing, honestly. Another piece of it would just be understanding what level of player do you think that you are? And
Hmm.
it's not
Yeah.
that you have to be that, but do you think you're D1? Okay, then why settle for anything less than that? Take every avenue you can to get to where you want to be. And I think, unfortunately, especially in our area, I think due to negative experiences, I think to burnout too. I think players play a lot more than they need to. Um, when the opportunity that they thought would come doesn't come, then they don't know what to do and they walk away or they, just kind of give up on it. And I don't think that's correct. But I think that again, a lot of them don't necessarily understand of what they want to achieve and how that looks. And then definitely in today's time, we aren't doing an effective job at the youth levels of teaching the change in landscape. To where high school players are significantly impacted by um, the NIL and just the
Yeah.
change of perspective of how we recruit. And a lot of people have questions but aren't doing the research or paying attention enough to figure out the answer. So I've been trying to educate people on that for a while now, just so they understand that these opportunities are not that they're not available, but they look a little different than they used to. And if you understand the system, then you better understand how to navigate. So I think the onus falls a lot on the player and parent to be able to market effectively. But it's just a matter of kind of narrowing it down to what it is that you actually want to accomplish. And then being open to all possibilities because college basketball is not easy. I don't care what level it is. Um, and it's a small percentage of people that get to do it. But it's a tool that you can utilize and navigate in a couple different directions to get to where you also want to go. And I think again, if they paid attention to this new landscape, they will see that because you have players who, are at NAIAs or D2s or low level D1s, and they're putting in the work, they're getting better, they're performing, and now they're getting the opportunities for these higher places
Yeah.
because they're looking more so in the college ranks to improve versus looking in the high school ranks. So again, I try to educate them to pay attention to the way that the system is shifting so you know how to best navigate the system. But it really does break down to communication and doing the research and using the resources you have to
Mhm.
get as much information as possible. And I think that that's where we could see a big improvement, especially in the high school players.
Yeah, what to your point about the communication, I know one of the things that, I speak to about, some of my girls who are looking at their options is the idea of getting them to understand that like them being recruited is also they as players recruiting those coaches and those programs as well, that it's a two-way relationship, that they got to be asking good questions. They got to see what that college is offering and whether or not it's a good fit for them. It's not a one-way street where they got to be proactive and know what they want out of their college experience. So I think I completely agree with your point that, for players to be, proactive, to be like communicative, that they're the ones who need to be just as active in asking those questions and recruiting and making sure that the programs are offering what they need, just like how the coach and the other program is trying to recruit them to make sure that they fit what that program needs.
Right, for sure.
I wanted to also ask you, Coach, because I know you brought this up, and I think this is super cool about the experience of coaching against your brother, your
Yeah.
twin, who is in the same region as you. So you see him, on a consistent basis. What is that like? Like how do you like prepare for it? Do you prepare for it like it's every other game? Do you have anything that's like a little bit like different, or like do you know like his coaching tendencies and he knows yours, and so like there's a chess match there? Like what is that experience like for you?
This past year, it was a lot. It was a very emotional one, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just because it's a moment that I've worked very hard to be at this level, be a head coach. I've been an assistant for a long time, and just didn't see an opportunity, didn't take the opportunity at the times. So, um, for us, we've been at this a long time. Again, we started when we were 21, so we sacrificed a lot of our youth per se, to help influence young players, to help grow the game as best we could, to give back. So to be in a position to where we can coach against one another at the college level, it was emotional.
Yeah.
We do know each other very well, and it was also emotional because I coached with him, so a lot of the players, obviously, that he still has, I also coached. So it was a very emotional moment, but it's just we've always had a sibling rivalry. Where we're trying to be the best at each and everything that we do, and we are each other's measuring stick. To be able to say, how am I marking out or whatever. So this year was difficult on the court because my team, I got hired late, so I didn't really get a full scope of recruiting last season. So we made the best of what we could. So it was a humbling experience as well because I think we lost by 40. Um, but it was just a motivational thing to say I'm on this level, I belong here, and we're gonna show up and compete better the next time around. And so for my players, it was just a don't feed into the moment that this is building up to be. This is a me thing, you know what I mean? That like I don't need you to take on any additional pressure because this is the twins playing against each other, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I just need to go out and play to the best of your abilities, and the rest I got you. So again, I feel like we grew a lot as a team through that experience, but in the end, it was a blessing. Family got to come, family, friends, supporters of ours over the year, to just captivate the moment. So the jitters are out now. So
Yeah.
next time
Yeah.
around, I think we'll be a little more prepared. And again, this is what the scope of college is. You get to go out and recruit the players that you need to be successful. So that's what this off season has been. So all in all, though, it's been enjoyable, and I'm trying to continue to change narratives to where um, we can work together while we still build separately. So
Yeah.
we're trying to create different avenues of doing some joint things this year, with like just joint open gyms and joint practices possibly. Because again, it's the best way to show that you can be community while being opponents. And again, at the end of the day, we're blood, so there's no better way to do it than together.
Uh, I love for all coaches and what you said who are willing to provide opportunities and do things that are best for players, like you said, right? Like especially obviously if your brother, right? You're out there competing, sibling rival or everything, but it's always cool to hear, when coaches can work together and help each other out and provide better experiences for their players. Because obviously, ultimately that's what it should be about is making sure that our players are having a great experience and they're getting everything out of this game that they can. So when coaches can kind of work together to provide those, that's really cool and that's really special. And like you said, right, I know that. That competitive rivalry is still going to be there, so you're working together really well now, but you're going to be ready for them. You're going to be ready and more prepared this next time, right?
And when October rolls around, it's a different story. So
Uh
right now, we play nice in the sandbox.
huh.
We work together to do some things, but when
Yeah.
that season come around, it's back across the line. So,
And I'm sure he
but it's
wouldn't
all
have it any other way.
no, no, it's all healthy. It's we've been doing it our whole lives. It's just a matter of now it's on this level. But again, it's all healthy. We look forward to it, and it's a way to push each other where we don't have to be around every day. And so
Sure.
he doesn't see the work I do all the time. I don't see the work he does all the time, but I know that there's work being done, and vice versa. So we're still just pushing each other to be the best version of ourselves. Because again, if this is what we want to do, we have to be the best at what we do to try to get opportunities for ourselves in the future as well. So it's a blessing and a curse. It gets a little tricky with recruiting
Yeah.
because we talk to the same players, but it's
Right.
something that we're honest about with them because it's nothing weird. Look, we're competitors, but we're brothers. So yeah, we have an eye for talent. We're gonna both talk to you, and it's up to what makes sense for you.
Right.
But again, like you said, just collaborating and being able to tell them that either way you go, you're gonna get good coaching.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the focus has been. So it's just a matter of what the player feels is the best fit for them based off their own merit. But again, it's something where we will also talk with one another and say, hey, my roster's looking kind of full. I got this player that reached out. Do you need them or whatever? Because again, like you said, at the end of the day, we're trying to help people reach their dreams and young people reach their dreams. So if I can't provide it, maybe I know someone that can. And then sometimes those are the best relationships that get built along the way as well. So it's been enjoyable this entire time.
Yeah, that's super cool. You said about the recruiting thing when you know, like, hey, I'm full, or this isn't gonna work here, but hey, this, my brother here, he maybe want to look out for you and stuff like that. That's awesome when coaches are willing to, help out players in that way and be able to, kind of move them along elsewhere and try to help them out get like good fits. Because like we just talked about, this recruiting, it's difficult enough as it is to navigate everything. So to have coaches who are willing to kind of help each other out and put players in the right direction, and that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
So, as we kind of talk about the concept of being a coach who considers themselves a teacher, let's talk, coach, about your process, about how you go about teaching the game to your players. Kind of describe kind of what your process is for getting your players to understand how it is that they need to be playing offense and defense. And I imagine, there's a lot going on with that now that, they're playing at the college level. Probably a lot of these players don't really know each other. So you're also dealing with that. So kind of what is your process of kind of getting them to gel together and understand what they need to be doing on the offense and defensive level?
Um, I like to break them down. And I tell them whatever you think you know, let it go. Because we have to learn a new way. And a lot of them, unfortunately, haven't been taught the most equal way to play, I'll say. Some systems are strictly zone defense. Some systems are run the play every time. Some systems are get it to the guard. So I can't really dictate what they got from where they came from. But just to get them to understand that I am a different coach, I have different expectations. So we're gonna start from ground zero and work our way up. And that there's a lot that gets unpacked in that because there's a lot of different elements to the game that you have to consider, at this level. But it's just a matter of buying into the concepts, buying into the principles and the standards. And those are things that we set out on day one and we reiterate every single day. And it's one of those things where it helps you keep everyone accountable. Your best players get told the same as the person at the end of the bench. And the end of the bench people get to see that, so they know that this is not a favoritism thing or you only do this for this player or that for that. It's a universal language that we speak. Um, and I go through teaching that way. So a lot of it is, well, I use read and react and concepts on offense. So it's getting them to understand the game from a holistic perspective and not just a positional perspective. So it's more so, what is the right play to make based off of this? What is the right play to make if this happens? What do we want to create? So it's working through the mental piece of it so that we don't have to come down and run a play all the time. We can just focus on the actions and capitalizing on what we're trying to create versus what the defense is giving us. And defensively, I'm a man-to-man person with some zone principles and maybe some zone fragments where we might use zone to kind of throw people off. But we play it as one. So we're all looking to help one another. We're all in position to be able to respond and recover for each other. And then it's a continuous thing to where no one's at fault um, per se until all angles have been covered, right? Then we can go back and evaluate, well, where do we mess up at? Oh, well, this is what happened. So okay, now we know what to do to fix it. So it's really a matter of constant conversation and breaking it down to them and then showing it to them. Because again, where I'm getting it from, unfortunately, a lot of our players don't watch basketball all the time. So I was trying to get them to fall in love with the student part of the game to where I tell them, don't watch basketball with me because I'm gonna take hours to watch it because I'm gonna pause and rewind and record and write it down and see that set that I liked and ask questions about it and then work through it. So you do not want to watch a game with me, but that's the student part of it. So I challenge them to not be fans when they watch the game, to be a student, and you can pick up on it through other people's play and experience. So that's the way I like to do it, and I'll reference a lot of things that they might see. And I challenge them to watch basketball more regularly. And
Right,
the
right.
last time we kind of had this conversation with the players, I asked them, I said, if I came in and said, yeah, I don't watch basketball, I just coach it. I'm kind of good with my knowledge, or it said like I don't really watch the game anymore. Would you play for that coach? And they was like, no. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want players that don't watch the game because I don't like that either. So again, it's just getting them to understand that, like you said, it's a two-way street. And we work together to advance and get to where we want to go. So again, I like to start from scratch and implement those things every single day. And then they tend to show up when you least expect it. It'll be a moment in a game or, something in the season to where you can reflect on something that we've been building in all the time, and now you know why we've been doing it. So it's those aha moments that also make it, worthwhile, because then you know that they're really locking in on what it is that you've been teaching and they're grasping it. So that growth and improvement is important to see, and it lets you know that the way that you're doing it is the right way.
So, based on what it is that you said, it sounds like, you know, something that high school coaches can do is, really start to, if they are not already, really kind of teach their players the whys behind the game, really get them to understand, some of the nuances and the things that are happening on the court and kind of build their, basketball knowledge and their IQ a bit so that it's not, a complete start from scratch when they get to the college level. Because I'm imagining hearing your explanation that this takes probably quite a bit of time to, get them to understand the offensive and defensive concepts that you want. So if, me, for example, as a high school coach, if I'm continuing to work on, making sure my players understand how to play and what they're doing and why, and they're able to kind of think and have those conversations with me, that hopefully will give them a pretty big leg up and a pretty good head start when they go to the collegiate level.
Yeah, and it's to be honest, so I have to give a shout out to Coach Sapone of North Point High School where I started coaching. I've been for 7 years. He kind of showed me the ropes of how that worked. So just learning the system for yourself takes time, right? So it takes a
Sure.
lot of time to learn all the nuances of whatever system you want to learn or anything like that. So it's going to take the players just as much time, if not more. So we've started to build things in over the years, and we would look at a team and say, "Yeah, we're not going to get all of this down this year, but we can focus on this portion of it, and then we can build on it for the next years to come." And granted, there's some ways in which you can't wait that long, but again, I think if the process is to understand that it's a slow process, because they have to grasp and understand it to where they can go and do it as if you're not there. And so that's something that we've done at the high school level where I come from or came from. And I've just extended and taken it with me. So it takes time to build, and I don't go 0 to 100. We kind of break it down in segments and focus on the things that are easier to grasp first, and then we challenge and turn that up so we can get better at it, because there's no way you can be comfortable with where you are because then you're not working to get better. So it takes time, and I understand and accept the fact that it will be ugly. They're going to mess it up
Sure.
more than they're going to get it right. But you teach through that. You teach them through their mistakes. You teach them how to respond to those mistakes. And then there's a conversation. So something I've always taught any player I've ever coached is that there's three perspectives in the game that matter: coach, player, and official. And you can't disregard either one of them and think you're going to come out and be successful. So what you saw is not necessarily wrong, but I need to understand what it is that you saw so I can tell you what I saw, and then we can merge it together to make it make sense. And the same thing with the officials, right? You get the even in the NBA now where everyone want to wag the finger, like, well, what did the officials see that maybe you didn't understand or whatever? So it's just a process, and again, it goes back to the communication, but I really do feel like if you continue to do that on a daily basis, one, you will find that you're having the same conversation a lot of times. But hopefully there's growth in those conversations to where you're getting asked something different. And that's ultimately what teaching the game is about. So that's kind of what my focus is on. Outside of the X's and O's portion, and winning and losing and points, I feel like if you just focus on playing good basketball, good things will tend to come. And that has been working, and that's what I'm gonna stick to.
I think the perspective part that you mentioned is really really important, and I've talked about this with other guests, and so it's really cool that you brought that up. This idea of like the way that I see the game during a game and what I'm able to see and what I look at is obviously not what my players are seeing, and I've had, and I'm sure most coaches have been in that situation where your player will tell you like, hey, like this is what I'm seeing on the court from my perspective, and maybe they're looking at something or see something that like I don't have that perspective on. And of course, there's times where it's going to be the opposite. So, that kind of made me think about, really understanding and having those conversations with my players about like, hey, like what did you see on there? Like what was your perspective? Because I'm not the one playing, so you need to tell me like what were you seeing and what was your decision or what did we do or not do in that situation? And so to be able to kind of empower your players to make sure that they're having those conversations with you, it's really important that they have your perspective, you have their perspective. It just makes everything better, I think.
Yeah, and it's again, it helps build confidence to where they're not I feel like any competitor, any good competitor, you're your own worst critic, right? So I feel like if you jump on them for a mistake that they made that they've already jumped on themselves about, they're going to shut down and they're going to feel like that they can't do what it is that they've tried to do. And that's not what I want. I never want a player to shut down. I need you to talk to me. Let me know what you saw. And I can say, no, you missed this, or you wasn't looking at the other side, whatever it is. And then again, they can say, oh, that's what you meant. Okay, cool. And then again, that's the benefit of filming your games or your practices or whatever, because you can go back and look at it so they can see it from a real life perspective and not just from try to remember what happened. You can go back and look on film and say, no, look, you did
Yeah.
that, which I got it, but you didn't see her wide open right there. And then it's like a damn coach, I missed her. Okay, cool. So it's one of those things where again you have the conversation, you use your resources, and if everyone's open to growth and dialogue, then that's what will happen. So that's just something that I've always believed in. And again, a lot of it has come from being an assistant because you have to sit back as an assistant and realize that everything that I think and see is not going to happen. So how can I still be engaged when head coach tells me no? You know what I mean? How can I still be engaged to help my players? And a lot of times I think that that's where player coaches are very important because that's kind of the perspective that they can give somebody who's not really understanding what the coach is asking for, but they're seeing it from a player's perspective and also
Yeah.
understand enough of the coaching side to better help the players. So all of those things come into play to help get the players to the point that ultimately they need to be for consistent success.
Awesome. Yeah, no, 100%. I co-sign that for sure. I kind of alluded to this point, Coach, so I'll just kind of, get back to it and ask you this about, what can we as high school and younger coaches do? What are the concepts and the things that we can be working on to teach our players the game so that they are like ready to play at college? You have obviously experience working at those younger levels as well. So what can we, really make sure that we're doing at these younger levels so that when our players do hopefully move on, if they want to go play at the college level, they're as prepared as they can be.
Um, hmm, I think learning is first and foremost. And I feel like we, as coaches, overall, some, not all, obviously, we don't do a good job of learning the game thoroughly to be able to teach it in a correct manner. And then I think that there has to be an understanding that wins are not going to dictate um, if a player is getting understanding it or not. Again, you could lose a lot of games and that player still might get a lot better. And I think that unfortunately, for what AAU or travel basketball has created is this conundrum that like you have to win at this level at all costs, and that's not true. The idea of this is development, so that again, if they want these opportunities down the line, they'll be more complete of a player to be able to be marketable or attractive to a bevy of coaches. So I think that just learning it is one, breaking it down is another thing, right? A big emphasis is going into taking a lot of the plays out. Like we can't keep drilling these kids on play, 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 play. They need to be able to play and make mistakes and have the freedom of understanding that their actions contribute to the success on the floor. And so short-sided games and practices are good. Kind of giving some scripted scenarios and practices are good to teach them how to navigate through certain things that they may see in the game. Understanding, I think the best offense to a good defense is to understand what the defense is designed to do. And I often don't hear that. Like I don't hear our younger coaches, and I know I didn't when I was first starting. I'm not gonna
Mm,
lie. I didn't teach why are we playing this zone? Like, why are we playing this defense? What are we looking to take away? What are we willing to give up? Because you can't take away every single component. There are certain things that you are going to give up more in a certain zone. But again, trying to teach that perspective versus, okay, we're going to play this and you're not telling them why or what it's designed to do. So I just think it comes down to really, really breaking it down at the very, very smallest levels, and then building on that, as they navigate and grow. So at the point in time where, if you start at the youth level with that process, they'll be a lot more advanced when they get to middle school and high school. To where now at college is more so now we're tailoring it to whatever that system is, whatever that coach likes to do, whatever style they like to play. We're now tailoring all the knowledge you have to fit what this is doing versus trying to get you to understand the system and try to figure out how to play within it. So I think it's a lot easier if players understand the game completely, and then you can tailor it to a specific system versus being taught a specific system and then don't know how to expand beyond that when opportunity comes. So I just think for the us youth coaches, just slowing it down, teaching it all the way through, and it's going to require a lot of talking and probably some boring
Yeah.
practices per se. But I always tell them that you got to fall in love with boring because that's where you learn. So I think if we saw more of that, games would be better. Players will pick up on things naturally on their own, and it won't be this, kind of layoff, I guess, or kind of disconnect at the different levels.
You you brought up like something that I really do agree with, and it resonates with me a lot. The idea of this patience, right? I think that there's this idea of, especially at those younger levels, like we want our players to be successful and we want them to do really well, and we can get very focused on wins, and we can get focused on them, being in a situation where, we want to win and we want to obviously see success on the court. But to your point also of like short short term versus like long term, like are we just installing something, and like you said, like just say, hey, this is just what you do and don't question it, this is just the offense we do and defense we do, I just need you to do these certain actions and try to control everything? Or do we take like the longer, more difficult route of maybe having to explain a lot more and having to let our players kind of figure things out and learn the game and break things down conceptually and give them more of that long-term understanding of the game, which may come at the cost of, some short-term success, or you may have to, sacrifice things that you want to do in practice and everything. But I think to your point of like, we want to make sure that these players, have a good grasp of the game and good understanding of the game where they can go into, any offensive or defensive system and know exactly like what is expected of them. But for that to happen, like we got to put in that work of making sure that our players have that understanding, even if we want them to, only do certain actions or certain things. We need to make sure that they're well rounded and understand the game more at a deeper level.
Yeah, I think that's what's missing. I think, you want to win now, you want to just focus on what you know, or what's easier for you, and then it restricts what the players understand. Because even in AAU, obviously our players come from different high school programs, and unfortunately, the takeaway I get from most of them is that you're not being taught anything. You're being told a lot, but you're not being taught much. So and it makes it difficult to have the success we want at the AAU. And granted, their talent is going to win them games. But when it comes down to what do we provide them as coaches and their experience, it can be questionable because it's hard to kind of go back and try to reteach some things while you're still actively playing and getting them to win. And then also, AAU has become this big focus on getting noticed by colleges. So it's a very tough spot to be in, but I think if we kind of tailor it back a little bit, we can see more success than what we have been recently.
Definitely, 100% agree. Coach, what have you done as a coach, as we kind of talk about the concept of being, a lifelong learner as a coach? What have you done to maybe adapt and change your coaching techniques throughout the year? And how have you, been able to stay open-minded and make sure that you yourself maintain being a lifelong learner of the game?
One, it's my experience as a player. So I'm 6'6", and I was 6'3" as a freshman in high school. Um, so everybody just assumed, oh, he's a big and play him as a big. So I kind of had to teach myself how to play the game the way I wanted to play, and what I thought fit for where I was. And then obviously I plateaued at 6'6", and even now I tell people, my height is in the NBA is a guard, but no one wanted to teach me guard skills when I was young. They wanted me to be a big. So as a coach, I've just never adopted that philosophy because I felt like that was at a detriment for me. So I teach players how to do everything. And then again, in watching as a fan, you notice that over the years, that's the way basketball has transitioned. We have gone away from, the days where your power forward and your center was the same guy, and you're clogging up the paint and all those restrictive things. So I've just always watched the game from a perspective of one. Lamar Odom was one of my favorite players because he was
Mhm.
6'10", but could handle the
Super versatile.
pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've always loved that. And then obviously the game is becoming, the more versatile you are, the more dangerous you are. So I've always just grown with the times and going with the times. And then as a coach, I just study people who already coach. I steal a lot of stuff. I tell people it's not a lot of things that are original per se. But you take some things that you like from different programs or different aspects that you see, and then you try to make it work for you. But so I study the greats. That's my thing. I want to be a great, so I have to study the greats. So I pay attention to a lot of podcasts that talk about it, a lot of coaching clinics. I've even read some books about things. And again, collaborating with other coaches that I know and trust and who have helped pour into me. So asking those questions of, hey, what do you think about this? Or how do I shift this to get me that? So it's just collaboration to continue to grow. And then reviewing and reflecting on some things that you used to think was great, but now maybe it's not working so well. And then being open to that change, especially when it comes to as your team changes, maybe this doesn't fit this group, even though that's hard to accept sometimes. Because last year, again, I'm a man-to-man defensive coach, but we didn't have the team to sustain that for the entire games. So I had to adapt and I had to figure out, okay, well, what zone can I utilize that kind of gives me some element of pressure and man, but it also protects my group. So it's just one of those things where you have to constantly ask yourself, what can we do to be better? And then you try it out and then you reflect on it. So I've just always been that to where I'm going to consistently find ways to improve. I'm open to all aspects and resources. And then I also know that I am who I am. So I need to take some time to sit with things. I need to take some time to really internalize it and make it make sense for me. And sometimes I'll scrap something that I thought I liked and now I don't. Or I'll say, you know what, I'm gonna sit on it a little longer and continue to get better at it and learn it before I try to give it to the team. Because sometimes that could be your biggest detriment too, where you see something and then you try to implement it tomorrow, and then you
Yeah.
can't fully explain it, and they're looking at you like, "Well, you told us to do it," and I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
I gotta go back and watch it." So
Yep.
sometimes I was like, "It's okay to sit on it for a while. Let me keep doing my work on it, and then when I finally get it, I'll introduce it." So that's just been how it is for me, and I always look at it from the player's perspective of if I were receiving this way, how would it work? How does it work for them? And then so asking myself that gives me the opportunity to say, okay, well, this is how I need to tailor it or tweak it or slow it down even further. So it's just constant conversation with them. But for me, I love to get better at things and better understand, so I could be a part of all conversations. So it's really just studying the way that the game is gone, where it's going, to be able to understand how I can navigate that system to be successful on my end too. So that's just kind of always been my mantra, I guess you could say.
And you're kind of in an interesting, position. You brought up the idea of having to, adapt and change and be able to kind of modify things based on the players that you have in, because obviously not every player, not every team is going to be the same year after year, and so you're going to have players of different strengths and weaknesses. So for you, when you think kind of about recruiting, are you recruiting players to, fit a specific offense or defense that you want and hoping that you can get players to fit that certain system? Or are you, casting a wider net and then whoever does commit to your program, you're going to then sort of make changes and alterations and see where everybody kind of best fits?
I kind of do it in both regards. I have an ideal version of the team, based off of size, based off of versatility, based off of skill sets. But obviously at the community college or the JUCO level, you kind of can't base it off of the top kids. You kind of have to be a little realistic to say, okay, well, how can I get that from different spaces? For example, like I'm not a fan of small guards. I kind of want my point guard to be like 5'7", 5'8". But there might be a 5'5", 5'4" kid who can really play. And I have to adapt and say, okay, well, it doesn't fit the mold that I really would like, but I could still use that. There's still a place for her in my team because her skill set is aligned with what can be productive. So it's kind of a twofold thing. But my, outlook is what can the player provide and how do I tailor that to what we need? And a lot of the times it's not always going to be height specific or speed specific. For example, I have a recruit now who is 6 feet, and for some 6 feet players, she could be the post for us. But she's a guard and she wants to continue to play on the wing. So I'm not going to stick her in the post because she's 6 feet. Like that's not her game. That's not what she wants to do.
Yeah.
So it would do her and my team a disservice if I forced her to be something she's not. So you just recreate some things. So I might have a power forward that's 5'8", but she's comfortable in the paint and she likes the contact and she's more physical and gritty. So you kind of mix and match based off of what the players can provide. But I go into it with an ideal mindset, but then that wide net, as you said, allows me to say, okay, well, this is what I have. How do I still work it to fit what makes sense for me? And then it's just trial and error through the off season, through workouts, through open gyms, through things like that. You get to more so get comfortable and familiar with who they are and how they play, and then you start to just move pieces on the board until you get a complete puzzle. So it's a twofold thing for me. And again, this year was the first year of fully recruiting, so I cast a very wide net, and then just try to catch whatever we could, and then we'll start the building process coming up soon.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's so important for, coaches to, kind of consider and kind of think about the coaches that are, think in that recruiting process like you are, like you want to have yourself open to a lot of players and a lot of possibilities. You don't want to be close-minded and, just have certain specific type of players that you want because you have a system that you want to run. Like, I think if you're a coach who is a lifelong learner of the game, then you should be able to adapt. And like you said, right, you're going to kind of play around with things and see how things work and what's good and what isn't good. But I think that's part of the fun and part of the challenge to it is to, you know, get the players who fit your system and fit your culture, and then maybe have an idea of what works, but to be willing to try different things and being able to not be married to a specific concept or think there's, one specific way the game needs to be played. And I think that open-mindedness allows you to kind of, stay fresh and to stay up to date with what things are going because you're not like stuck in one specific system that you're like unwilling to move on from.
No, and again, if you just watch modern day basketball, you can see the example of advancement and growth. So, the game against my brother actually, we were bringing the ball up with our center who's 6'3", because their guards are really good at pressuring the ball, and they were forcing turnover after turnover. And I'm like, we just play through her. Like she could bring the ball up, and she wasn't comfortable with it. But I'm like, look, this is what this game dictates. So we're gonna do it. And once she got a couple of runs with it, found some success, she was had a more pleasant game. So it's just one of those things where again you adapt and you playing chess, not checkers. And that's the fun part of coaching, to be able to take everything that you know and put it out there when it's called for. And those are like the moments in the game that I really enjoy, to where something that I drew up or something that I called out or just told them to maneuver through clicks and works. That's to me what I provide to them as my player. So again, yeah, the open-mindedness is very much a thing to be able to be successful. And you can do that in a variety of ways depending upon what the game is called for. There's been situations where teams have gone box one on our best player, and I told her to
Mm,
just stay in the backcourt. And they were like, huh? I'm like, yeah, their best defender is checking you. So I like our four versus their four. So yeah, you stay out the way. And again, people are like confused by it, but if you look at the whole system of it, I trust my other players to contribute because that's what we
yeah.
work on. So it's just one of those things where again, it's if you really evaluate and figure out where your advantage can come in at, then you play into that. And that's just again, you got to think the game through to be able to come up with those um, perspectives. So that's the fun part of what I get to do.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that. I love I love that. Like you mentioned, like you have your center or that whoever that traditional center is. Sometimes it's best for them to bring the ball up, and I think that that's so good as a coach to just have that like mentality because you don't feel that there's like a certain like right way to play, and that you're willing to adapt with the way that the game adapts. Right? You mentioned how the game is different 10 years ago than it is now, and so that's one of the concerns you would run into if you're kind of stuck in a certain coaching way. I think it could be very easy to become outdated as a coach or obsolete when you're running the same thing year after year while the game is evolving and adapting, right?
Yeah, and it's just a thing where I ask myself, how can I get better at this? Or how can we accomplish these things? And I am naturally a person who I question everything because I want to understand it. So I'm asking a bunch of questions. I'm not accepting it just because you said it. And then I'm challenging myself to figure it out as well. So, even like example, there's this notion of we got to play faster. We got to play faster. Well, how are we playing faster if I have to slow it down to give the guard the ball every time? That's actually slowing us down. So you tell the players that say we play faster if the guards are the ones out running because aren't they the faster ones typically on the team? So it's different little things that I just challenge and come up with. And again, if everyone's being taught to do everything, then there's no restrictions of us being able to do that. So now in college, we kind of tailor some things back based off of what makes sense for the group. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, we're all going to practice doing this because you never know when that moment's going to be called, and we need you to step up and do this thing that you haven't been doing the last couple of games, but this game is different. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. That's
again,
good. Yeah. There's different requirements game after game, right? Things that are needed in one against one opponent, like you might not need that, but hey, a couple days from now, I face this team, and hey, you need to be doing more of this, and so that flexibility, no, I love that. I wanted to ask coaches kind of my last question before we hit our concluding segment. Talk a little bit, and I know you mentioned this a little bit, so but I do want to ask you this kind of directly as its own question. Talk about your kind of process for self-reflection and how you go about identifying your own personal strengths and weaknesses, not only for your team but both for you as a coach. How do you kind of use self-reflection to become a better coach?
um, I take time with things that good and bad, and ask how do I feel about it. And that's something I've learned just through life. Because sometimes you can win but feel bad. Feel like it wasn't a good win or you didn't like it. So I ask myself how I feel about it. I'll ask people that I trust, so my circle of coaches, my circle of family and friends that I trust. Of what they thought or what they saw. Because again, it's a resource. This game has provided a lot of connection. I'm not shy from seeking counsel. Um, and then I'll ask, did I show up in a manner that I'm comfortable with, I'm happy with as a human being a lot of the times? Because I have a vision of how I want to represent myself in a lot of these instances. So that's kind of my self-reflection process in life. And I just use it in basketball. So it'll be, again, if I don't like something, I understand that I have the power to change it. So if I don't like the way practice is going, I don't have to let it finish out that way. I can stop it and I can say, hey, this isn't productive. We need to change something. The energy needs to shift. And I pay attention to players and their moods and their vibes and their language and how people say things. Because sometimes it's just a matter of shifting it a little bit. So
Yeah.
there's times where we practice day after day, it's stressful, game. Yeah, today when you come in, and I might not tell them, but today we're not gonna practice today. Today we're gonna go do this and bond, or we're gonna take a break and do that, or just kind of changing what the dynamics is. Or yeah, we're gonna come in and stretch, but today's just a shooting day. We need a rest and recovery. So it's just making the schedule a little bit different because you're paying attention to what's going on. And sometimes again that takes sacrifice of what you might want to do because that's where your direction is of trying to get your team prepared or whatever. But you also have to pay attention to the human side and feed into that a lot, especially with young ladies. So that's just a part of my self reflection process. And then I'll have to be honest if I miss the mark. And then I learned in my profession as a teacher, an actual teacher, that it's okay to admit to your constituents that you made a mistake. Or that something didn't go off the way that you wanted it to, and I apologize for that, but I want to change it. So again, I'm not do as I say or I'm in charge, so it's my way or the highway. If I make a mistake, I'm human enough to apologize, or to let you know that I'm not happy with how it happened. But I want to be better. I want to see a change. So I'm going to be the change that I want to see because ultimately, like they'll follow my example if I provide that every day. So the self-reflection is just something that is, I think, is independent for each person. However, you self-reflect in your best ways is what you should do. But for me, it's a lot of questioning, seeking counsel, and then making a decision to be different than what it was, and then coming back and reflecting on that too. So it's a never-ending process for me.
And I'm sure because I've been through this myself, and I'm sure you could speak to this too, that your players really are responsive and really appreciate when a coach is being honest with them about, hey, this wasn't working, or like, practice isn't going the way we need to. We need to pivot this way, or I made a mistake on this, or I think we need to change things up. I think that players really do appreciate when coaches are honest in that way, because I know that players can sometimes feel that they're expected to be perfect, even though obviously their coach isn't always going to be perfect. And so there's a lot of trust and a lot of good camaraderie, I think, that can be built when you're honest with your players about like things that are going maybe not so well or things that need to be changed a little bit. I really do feel that they appreciate and respect that a lot.
Yeah, again, it's just open and honest communication, and it's not gonna always be pretty. We're gonna
No,
have difficult conversations, because we're all fighting for the same thing, but in different ways sometimes. And it's a part of you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
hmm
And even with the perfection thing, I'm a perfectionist, but I also have learned the word of grace. And I even tell them that you're not gonna be perfect playing this game, and I break it down. I'm a math person, a numbers guy. I'm like, you're gonna fail at everything you do in basketball statistically. Like unless you're a great free throw shooter, but you're shooting 40 something percent from the field and 20 something percent from three. Those don't pass in a lot of other systems. You know what I mean? So it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
to
not good
focus on
grades to get those percentages.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, so it's like to focus on making every shot or being, perfect. That's not realistic. Honestly, it's not. But if you put the work in, then you'll put yourself in better positions to make those shots and be comfortable and confident with those shots, to where you'll make more of them than you miss. But you're not going to be perfect, so why operate from that standpoint? And again, a lot of times, I think a lot of players and people have a issue connecting things that are easily connectable but don't seem to be. But it just takes the pressure off. So I use a lot of things that I might see outside of basketball in basketball. It might just be a life thing, or it might just be a perspective thing that you can apply to the sport, or anything like that. And especially with the college kids, because they're entering into a new realm of life to where they're trying to
yeah,
figure a lot out at one time. So there's a lot of different conversations that we have to have that can impact basketball in a positive way. This past year, I had a student who was struggling in her major, and it was stressing her out, and it was causing
hmm
her to come to practice not herself. Um,
sure.
and from her experience, no one paid attention enough to care or to ask. But her energy just was different. So I'm like, hey, come talk to me. Like, what's going on? And she just broke out crying. And then we just worked through it till she got to say how she felt, what was going on, and then we said, okay, well, what's the best plan for you to not feel this way? So in the end, we ended up changing the major, and she's a lot lighter. She's a lot happier. She's going to graduate next year. So again, it's just paying attention to all of those things. And again, I think the players, they love structure. Even students of mine in my high school, they love structure. They're not going to admit it every day. Uh,
No, they won't.
no, but if you work to create it and make them feel comfortable in it and they can trust it, then it's something that you tend to have good responses and good relationships. So that's always just been my thing, as a human being, and as a coach. And so, again, I let them know that it looks different in the moment, though. Sometimes I'm not going to be able to give you that because my focus is also here. But at the end of the day, I'm always open to have a conversation. And again, I think that that's something that, as I reflect and I say, what do I want to provide for my athletes, or people who come in contact with me? That's kind of what I end up on. So that's how I navigate through my decision making as well. So it puts me in a good spot to feel good about what I do every day.
Definitely. No, definitely. I love that. Those strong relationships you have with your players, when you build those, you can definitely, like you said, notice when something is off and something isn't quite right. And that's a real transformative conversation you had. So I'm glad that things are working out well for her. That's awesome. Um, Coach, to wrap up, there's a couple questions that I ask every guest, so I'll go ahead and start here with this first one, which is thinking back on your coaching career. What is a specific moment from your coaching career that you think by sharing our listeners would be able to learn from?
Honestly, it's just my journey in general. Where I feel though if you want something, you have to be able to understand that you're not going to necessarily get it when you want it, and that's hard. But it's something where you have to believe in yourself, believe in the work that you put in, and continue to work for it. And negativity comes with everything that you do that's trying to push you forward. There was a million times where I was told, "Oh, I'm just a middle school coach," or "You're just a high school coach," or "You don't really know what he's doing." But I just turned that off and continued to push forward what I knew to be true about what I wanted. And I ended up where I was supposed to be when I was supposed to be there. So I tell people all the time, even for the job I hold now, I interviewed for it 2 years ago and didn't get it. Um, and there's a way in which you can give up, or there's a way in which you can push forward and do things in your own way. And so that's what I chose to do. So they wanted me to have more experience, and at the time, they wanted to hire me as an assistant to the person that they hired, but I wasn't comfortable with that. I felt
Yeah,
like I was a better candidate, to be honest. I felt like that was a job that I really wanted. So no, I'm not going to come in and play second fiddle because that's what you want me to do. You want me to get experience. I'm going to go get it in the manner in which I want to do it.
right,
So that's when I joined staff with my brother, and that was better for me because it provided a familiarity that was easier, a conversation just of what was expected a little bit. I kind of could jump in right where I knew I could jump in. That it wasn't a feeling out process per se. Um, in the end, now here I sit where 2 years later I interview and I get selected. So there's a satisfaction that comes with being able to know that the way that you believe things to be can work. And sometimes, unfortunately, we don't all get that opportunity because life or things will take us in a different direction. But
right.
a door closed is not a shutdown of all opportunity. It just means that it might not be the time, or that might not be the place. And I think that that's very, very critical to have that faith. And my journey has taught me that a lot of the times, because there was times where I felt like this isn't working out. I'm not getting what I want. Why am I continuing to do it? But I still put my head down and continue to do it. And now I'm happier than ever in the opportunity that I have, in the position that I have to build this program up in the way in which I feel it can be. So I just think that if people, tough out the rough times because the brighter days are coming. I think if you believe that wholeheartedly, those opportunities do show themselves when they're supposed to. You just got to fight it out through the tough no's and the doors being closed at certain spots, but to know that that ultimate door is going to open up when it's supposed to.
Definitely. No, I love that. Love that. I love that concept of resilience and, making the right decision that's for you and, being on your own journey. That's awesome. Coach, to wrap up, I give every guest what I like to call a 60-second soapbox. You can go over 60 seconds. It's just the title that I put to it, but I love to use it as a way for you to kind of get out a final idea, a closing message, a closing thought, something that you just kind of want to leave the listeners with. You can take it any direction you want, basketball wise or coaching wise, because it's your soapbox after all. So, Coach, I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor again, and I'm just going to go ahead and let you take it from here.
Okay. First, thank you again for having me. But the biggest thing for me that I feel right now is just I want to show love to everybody that supports women in sports, support women in general. Women deserve a lot more respect than what they are given for all that they can accomplish in every aspect of life. And I feel like if we do a better job of acknowledging that and supporting that, life will get easier for women, especially, but for everyone in general. So I want to say thank you to all of the women in my life, players, family, who have helped raise me to be the man that I am, and all of my teams. So North Point High School, College of Southern Maryland, Prince George Community College, Team Museum, my AAU team that I coach. I do this to give back to those who don't necessarily always have the voice to speak up for themselves. But I want to do it in instilling that confidence in them, supporting them through everything that I can, and just being a resource for them at the end of the day because I love this game just as well as they do. And there's an opportunity for us to grow the game and put respect on it by just showing up and doing the right things and building good habits every day. So I'm just thankful for platforms such as yours to be able to talk about it, spread the word, and ultimately just enjoy what we do because we should be able to do it freely. with opportunity presenting itself for the things that we want. And I think that the message and the narrative just needs to shift a little bit so we can get that back being the key focus of what this all is about. And that's something I'm working to do actively every single day.
Love it. As somebody who coaches women and has for a long time on the girls' side, I completely agree. I love where the attention, the focus, and more has been given recently with the girls' game, which is great, but still a long way to go. And all we can do as coaches to keep championing that and supporting women, supporting girls' athletics is all the better because right they deserve the best too. So no, I completely agree. Um, Coach, again, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing about your journey and talking about being a teacher, talking about being a lifelong learner, and all the reflection. Super reflective, which is great of this coaching process and all that goes into being a great coach and building a team and being somebody who's putting players in the best positions to be successful, as well as also the idea of growing as a coach and being self-reflective and always looking for ways to improve. So really excited, Coach, to keep following your journey and see where that takes you as you continue to build off of what you've been doing over the past seasons. So best of luck, Coach. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on here and chatting with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.